The Pacific Northwest is home to some of the country's best backpacking trails, but for many, like me, hiking and camping for days can feel daunting. So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with Karrie Carnes, a volunteer ambassador for the nonprofit women's outdoor empowerment organization, Women Who Explore. Their Portland chapter leads groups through the wilderness year-round on free backpacking excursions. Karrie is sharing her best kept tips for first-time backpackers and a few of her favorite trails to start your journey. It's Thursday, August 17th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. You know, Karrie, I've only really done car camping. Like, how many backpacking trips have you gone on?
So I would say between maybe a dozen to 24.
That's a lot.
For some people, though, like some listeners might be like, pshaw, that's nothing. So it's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that I'm still on like an intermediate experience with backpacking.
Well, I mean, a lot more experience than a lot of people have. I mean, I didn't even know there was a difference, to be honest. When people say they were going backpacking, I was like, so you're walking with a backpack? Like, It didn't click to me what, all that entailed. What do you wish you knew before going on your first backpacking trip?
Oh my gosh. I really wish that I had packed less. I think this even applies just to packing in general, if you're going on a regular trip, but you really only need like a set of clothes to hike in and get sweaty in, and then a set of like clean clothes to sleep in, which includes a clean pair of socks. I think most backpackers will tell you like the feeling of, your feet are tired potentially at the end of the day, putting on a nice pair of clean socks, like as you get in your sleeping bag is pretty clutch. The other thing, and I know you've had some folks talk before about hiking, and this also applies to hiking, is that cotton kills is kind of this little mantra. So you really want to either wear synthetics or wool. I personally like merino wool, but it is a little bit more of an investment because you're going to be wearing the same clothes for a few days, and any type of moisture, whether it be rain or sweat, cotton just holds that moisture. So really choosing your clothes wisely. And then my last thing that I wish I'd known, altitude equals colder. So some of my first times even car camping in the Northwest, like up on Mount Hood, depending on the month, I'm like, okay, the temperature's like easily 20 degrees different. So you have to know before you go. And that's going to kind of continue to be my mantra as we talk about this. Know before you go. Like, you don't want to be having these epiphanies or aha moments when you're at your campsite.
Yeah.
You want to be having them before.
So what are some other essential tips for backpacking in Oregon?
Know how strenuous it is. Know what your elevation gain is. And particularly backpacking, know whether there's any water sources, because water is heavy and the weight of your pack matters. So if choosing where either your destination is at a lake or you're crossing streams along the way, it means that you can carry a water filter. And there's lots of different kinds. Like, I think most of us are familiar with kind of like the Life Straw, but there's all kinds. I mean, we could spend an entire show just talking about water filters. Also, check the weather. It seems like a kind of a duh, but weather can come in pretty quickly, and it can be a blue sky day right now, and something could be rolling in that you just don't know about. Also, more and more applicable, unfortunately, is check the wildfire status. That is a real thing. A few years ago, I had planned to do the Timberline Trail, which circumnavigates Mount Hood, and there were fires that literally started, I think, the day before we were supposed to leave. So we bagged the trip. And so knowing before you go, and then tell someone. So let someone else know. This is so important. So if it's a friend, they don't even have to be local, friend, family member, just someone that you trust, and say, hey, I'm going out for just one night, or I'm going out for 3 days, or I'm going out for 10 days, whatever it is. This is the trail I'm doing. This is the trailhead I'm parking at. This is the car I'm driving. These are the people I'm with. I anticipate to be back on Sunday at 5 p.m. But if you haven't heard from me by 10 p.m. on Sunday, call the local rangers. If you get in a bad situation, that can save your life. So know before you go and share those plans with someone else. Okay, we've talked a little bit about water. Water's heavy. Have a water filter if you can. So food is really subjective. I will fully admit, and some people might gasp, but I could probably survive, and I have definitely been known to just bring protein bars, because the reality is you can survive for 3 days without food. But I have friends, shout out to Christina and some of my friends, you know who you are, who literally pack gourmet meals. And kudos to them.
Are they dehydrated?
Oh, not all of them. Some of them are. Like I have friends and I aspire to get this way, but they'll dehydrate their own food.
You know, Karrie, I actually follow many a TikTok account that's just backpackers that dehydrate food. And I don't really have any plans on backpacking, in my future because I find it very intimidating. Though I love hearing about it. And that is one of my favorite like niche genres is the dehydrators.
Yeah, they're super rad. And here's the embarrassing thing. I actually have a really nice dehydrator and I don't use it. So maybe it'll just be an excuse to have like a dehydrator party and bring over some of my friends. Um, so dehydrated food does not have to taste gross. It has come certainly a long way from like the MREs that we think of, that the military uses.
Chalky ice cream.
Oh, yeah. But on the subject of food, you need to take care of your food and your wrappers. So, food coming in wrappers has food residue, bare bags or bare canisters. And even if you're going to some place that's like, oh, it doesn't have bears, it's no big deal. Let me tell you my embarrassing story about wildlife. So I had been backpacking in the Enchantments, which is the North Cascades, and I had this little like snack that was the little peanut butter packets that, you just kind of squeeze the peanut butter into your mouth. And then I rolled up my little packet and I tucked it into the side of my backpack. And then that night we had a bear bag. We packed up, our toothpaste and our chapstick and all of our food wrappers. And then, we slung it over a tree. But I had forgotten this little peanut butter packet in my side bag. And I put my backpack outside my tent. And in the middle of the night, I hear this like this little noise. And I'm so tired. And I knew that it was a little animal, not a bear. But so I just kicked the side of my tent and I kicked my backpack and whatever it was turned out to be a mouse, ran away. And for like the next hour, I was just too damn tired to get out of my tent. Oops, can I say damn?
Oh my gosh, we're going to have to bleep that one, Karrie.
Oh, gasp. So long story short, a mouse, again, not a bear, but a mouse had ended up chewing through my backpack to get to this little.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So those two are really important. And they're important, obviously, because you don't want critters up in your stuff. And yes, I'm joking about this little mouse, but we don't want wildlife to associate backpackers with food. Like be conscientious in the way that you interact, in the way you kind of borrow this space of wildlife, not only for your own safety and convenience and comfort rather, but also future backpackers. The last thing is poop happens. Okay, so like bodily functions are a thing. And if you're out in the wilderness, even for only one night, something's going to happen. And please, please, please like plan accordingly. So that means learning what to do with your stuff. So digging a cat hole, they're called cat holes. And don't just like do your business on the ground and walk away. And I can't tell you how many people do that. And not only is it disgusting and unhygienic, it's just crass and crude.
I just want to say, if you're a backpacker that decides you're just going to poop on the floor, not bury it, which even a cat is smart enough to do, just stay out there. Don't come back.
I love that.
Just stay out there. This is who you are now.
Right.
You're just a floor pooper. And that's what you should do with your life.
Right. And I bet you don't return your shopping carts either.
Yeah. Nobody needs you. You're good. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, I want to hear some backpacking route suggestions. Well, let's talk about backpacking trips closer to Portland. Could you suggest 3 routes, like an easy, intermediate, and a difficult one?
Well, before I unveil those recommendations, I just want to acknowledge that someone's definition of easy could be someone else's definition of hard. So this is super, super subjective.
That's a very good point.
It is. And so just some things as you're deciding what you want to do to take into consideration. So distance, if you're like, yeah, I can hike. I've hiked 5 miles or 10 miles before. Doing that with a pack on your back that could weigh 30 or 40 pounds is totally different. So really taking distance into consideration, elevation gain. So someone's like, oh, that hike is only a mile. Well, is it 1,000 feet of elevation gain in that mile? And that's very common in a lot of places. So really looking at the elevation as you choose your route. Access to water. I know we talked about water, but that can really shift from like maybe a beginner to an intermediate, as well as stream crossings. Are you going to be walking across streams? Is it spring or the flow is really heavy? Are you going to, need to get your shoes wet potentially. All of those things go into it. So as far as beginners, I'm going to recommend, and these are all kind of, I think, in the Mount Hood National Forest. The Salmon River Trail is beautiful. It's up in Welch's, and maybe it's first of mine because I've hiked it so many times. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm an ambassador with this super rad group called Women Who Explore.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this Portland group that is just coming up on 10,000 members in our Facebook group. And this group of women is also a really great resource to crowdsource ideas from. And we host beginner backpacking trips. So the other thing I was going to recommend, because you mentioned you're a little intimidated, is find others who are more experienced to go along with. And then not only can you like meal plan together and kind of just disperse who's carrying what to alleviate some of the weight in your pack. So some of the places that our group has been doing beginners backpacking, Lower Twin Lake, Boulder Lake, and Shell Rock Lake. I also want to give kind of a shout out to Timothy Lake, also on Mount Hood. And hopefully you're seeing kind of a theme between those. So there was Salmon River.
There's a lot of water. That's what I'm getting. Yeah, there's a lot of water.
The light bulb goes off. And intermediate, that's actually kind of, I would say, the toughest one to recommend because that's going to be super, super subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like Silver Star. That's up in Gifford Pinchot. I know that this is Portland's podcast, but really let's just, Southwest Washington is kind of like a suburb of Portland. And so
I mean, like, sure.
A lot of Portlanders do a lot of hiking in Gifford Pinchot. And by the way, Gifford Pinchot isn't as populated and inundated. So if you're like me and you want to be in nature and not see other people, which is the allure of backpacking, then maybe you might find yourself seeking out Gifford Pinchot over Mount Hood. I know there's blasphemy. Do you have comments? Because people are just going to light this up and be like, I can't believe she said Gifford Pinchot.
I've never heard of this national forest. I actually had to Google it because I was like, what is she saying? So I don't know who's going to have so much opinion about this. What is it? Why do people, is it a controversial national forest? I don't understand.
No, I'm kidding. Actually, a lot of people really love Gifford Pinchot. It's a little bit farther from Portland. It's not as popular. And I would say, as far as more strenuous, the Timberline Trail around Mount Hood. I'm saying it because I've always wanted to do it, and I got wildfires like 2 or 3 years ago. I wasn't able to do it. It's about 40 miles circumnavigating Mount Hood. I've hiked or backpacked and hiked bits of it, like because there's beautiful wildflowers. I mean, you cross a lot of streams, so there's ample water, but it is also no joke.
I have a friend who does that routinely when the wildflowers bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's her favorite time to go. And she plans it in such a way that she ends her trip. I don't know if it's the lodge or some other location where she gets a burger and a beer. And like, that is what she looks forward to the entire trip. And I just think that's so funny. Cause I'm like, you could just go get a burger and beer. You don't have to wait 20 miles. But she just like, it's like, one of her favorite things. And I love hearing about it. I love it. Is that necessary?
Yes.
Karrie, after the long
so.
backpacking trip, like your first actual non-backpack meal?
It is, yes. So that is such a funny thing that you brought up because, so number one, it is Timberline Lodge. A lot of them start and finish depending on clockwise or counterclockwise. That's where a lot of people do it. And that's where I planned, we planned out our whole 4-day trip with, where we were getting our water, and definitely cap it off because you could be drinking the world's cheapest beer, but it's going to taste like heaven. And even if you don't, it could be the best lemonade. Sorry, it can be non-alcoholic as well. But yeah, that burger. And so a funny thing about backpacking is usually it definitely starts to happen on the last day, if not sooner, depending on how long your trip is. But there's the food fantasies. And so like you're hiking back and then you just start talking about what you're going to eat. And it's like this whole thing, like the food conversation. You can't have it too early though. Like if you're in a multi-day, you can't have it like, because if you start having it too soon, it really like takes over your brain and you get a little obsessive.
You start seeing your friend like a cooked turkey, like a cartoon, like a walking hot dog, stuff like that.
Right. Maybe if you've been picking mushrooms on the side of the trail, but that's a conversation for a different podcast.
Well, before we wrap up, what are some events listeners can look for? You mentioned a Woman Who Explores, puts on these backpacking trips for people who want to learn. And it's only for women identifying people, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, coming up, we've got Silver Falls. We're doing a group hiking, not backpacking, to Silver Falls, and then we're headed to a brewery after that. We also have an intro to rock climbing class, which is super cool. That's at Stoneworks Rock Climbing Gym. That's in September. Another thing that we also do is some online events as well. We do some free online events. We've been so busy having events that we still haven't posted our next ones. So if you hop on Women Who Explore Portland, you'll have access to all of those events and that community. And we do have a website, womenwhoexplore.com, but that is for like our national groups. But yeah, womenwhoexplore.com, information connecting you to our local groups, as well as online classes and even bigger trips.
Nice. Well, Karrie, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to chat with me and share your knowledge. I appreciate it. You've actually inspired me just like this much more to give it a try. I feel like if I ever did do this, I would just jump on that Timberline loop just because I want a burger. Like that's it.
Secret, you don't have to do the loop just to have the burger.
That's what I was saying.
Just go to the lodge.
That's probably what's going to happen first day. Like 4 hours in. You know what? I get it. Let's go get a burger. Well, thank you so much, Karrie. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Claudia.
And now for your microdose of news. Multnomah County's much-anticipated launch of a safe park shelter in Bonneville has been postponed. It's yet another setback in efforts to provide effective services for homeless residents. The county is also sitting on more than $100 million of funds, $60 million of which is earmarked for homelessness services, but a spending plan has yet to be finalized. And Portland's Artist Repertory Theater announced Tuesday that they are canceling their 2023 through 2024 season because of a funding shortfall. A statement on the company's website points to state pandemic funds that just didn't materialize, along with a nationwide arts funding crisis. The cancellation comes during construction for the theater's new $30 million facility, which representatives say will continue, although on a slightly different timeline that, of course, is depending on finances. Also, a clarification from yesterday's episode. In it, we discussed the new Paid Leave Oregon program and said people could apply for up to 12 weeks of paid parental leave if they're not covered by their employer. But it's actually a bit more complicated than that. In some cases, people can still use the program even if their employer offers benefits. To find out if you're eligible, go to paidleave.oregon.gov. Thanks to listener Ashley Bridget, who brought up the point. For even more local news and events, sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Portland. We'll throw a link in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the show, share it with a friend, rate, or leave us a good review. It'll really help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.